He began his career in 1934 as an instructor of economics at Harvard University. 60 years later, John Kenneth Galbraith is still there, now Paul M. Warburg Professor Emeritus. At 85, he has not only taught economic policy, he has helped shape it. In the early 40s, he set wartime prices for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and as President Kennedy's ambassador to India, he was responsible for the Agency for International Development. A liberal economist, he has authored 30, count them, 30 books, including his 1958 seminal work, The Affluent Society. His new book, A Journey Through Economic Time, looks at the economic trends of the 20th century, and we are pleased to have him here. Welcome. Great to have you here.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here.
Go ahead.
Even greater pleasure to hear that introduction.
You like that, did you?
Oh, yeah, I like that very much.
Well, I say that you know who was really honored to meet you was Hakeem Olajuwon. He said, he said, I want to get that book. I'm an admirer of John Kenneth Galbraith, and he said, it's good to see tall professors.
Well, this, could I tell a story?
Yes, of course you can.
Wonderful encounter I had many years ago with General de Gaulle, who said to me, Professor, what is your philosophy of your vast height? So I'd written this once in a book I did about my family, all of whom were tall. Yeah. There's nothing like plagiarizing yourself, so I said, well, Mr. the President, we tall men are taller than anybody else, therefore we're more visible, yes. Therefore we're more closely watched. You know, I didn't tell him Mencken's great comment, you know what a conscience is? That inner voice that tells you someone might be looking. We're more closely watched, yes. Therefore our behavior is better, and so the world instinctively trusts tall men.
And you, in fact...
No, I have to tell you the rest.
Yes?
What de Gaulle said. He said, man, but he said, there's one thing you have forgotten. The small men must be treated without mercy.
and probably the one that is often talked about as smallest of the small and given sort of definition to the notion of small men with huge insecurities is Napoleon, another Frenchman. Right?
No question about that.
Let me talk, I got so little time I want to talk about. Talking and reading about you fascinated me too. President Kennedy, who I assume you admired as much as you did Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Oh, I love Kennedy, yes.
Loved to read your cables and would insist they be sent to him because of the prose, because of the style, because of the wit.
My telegrams.
Yes.
This was something, I maintained a communication with him all through the years I was in India and after, a few months after I came back. And I think he liked careful writing. I can't say good writing because that would seem to be
immodest, and you wouldn't want to be
slightly immodest.
Right.
And
you wouldn't want to be accused of having a huge ego.
And I must tell you that the State Department was never very happy about this direct communication.
Yeah.
There was a plea that I be instructed to communicate through the State Department, which he rejected.
Good for him. Remember George Ball for me?
Oh, George was my closest friend. We were together in the Lend-Lease administration. We were together in the Strategic Bombing Survey. We were together in both of the Stevenson campaigns, and we were,
together in opposition to the war in Vietnam.
And we were together in opposition to the war. I love George, and I still have difficulty thinking that that gap in my life now exists.
That he's not there.
That he is not there.
And his legacy go ahead, sir.
Could I tell a story?
Please.
We were together in Germany in 1945, and he called me up at my headquarters one day, rather pretentious sound, and said, do you realize that the great men of Europe are gathering next week in Potsdam to settle the future of Europe? And I said, yes, I read the paper, George. He said, I think we should attend. I said, my God, we haven't been invited. He said, if we allow hurt feelings to keep us from attending that conference, it'll just multiply the error in not inviting us. So when it came the day of the opening of the conference, we had an airplane at our disposal. with Paul Nitze, we all flew to
Potsdam.
Berlin.
Yes.
Got off at Tempelhof, got some transportation, and attended the Potsdam Conference. That was how you attended summer conferences.
Invite yourself and go. When you were ambassador, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis came there in one of her more famous visits, including the one to Paris, I guess, likewise. What was it about her that you think has so resonated with America?
Oh, no question about it. She had a marvelously sharp, shrewd intelligence, a wonderful sense of humor, and she was lovely to be with. And Jawaharlal Nehru was immediately fascinated by this wonderful person. We were building a new embassy at that time, and we had housed Mrs. Kennedy and her sister in a small house just across from the small temporary house that we occupied in those days. Nehru thought that was inadequate and moved her into his house. It was a marvelously successful visit, to the extent that goodwill and companionship affects diplomacy. She certainly did it.
And that somehow resonated with the American public, a sense of that style and that elegance and that...
And a very sharp judge of people. That was quite possible that she had a sharper judge of people than her husband. Husband was disposed to be amiable and kind. She was not. If somebody was mentally a little soft, she saw it and didn't hesitate to voice the point.
I regret I'm out of time. We don't have the liberty to extend this. A journey through economic time. Let me ask one question, though. Do you think we're on the right course in terms of the economic policies enunciated by the president?
Well, I much prefer the policy of this president to his predecessors, and I think we must continue to worry about unemployment. There is a tendency to put all of our attention on inflation. That is something that everybody feels, higher prices, and we forget about the social disorientation, the suffering of the people who are out of work. That is suffering. Unemployment is something that's suffered by somebody else.
So we need an economic policy that creates jobs.
So I would like to see a stronger emphasis on the unemployment problem, and I'm prepared to accept some lesser concern for inflation in order to get people back to work.
John Kenneth Galbraith, his 30th book, A Journey Through Economic Time, a First-Hand View. The reason that, well, tonight is a good example. Thank you very much. We thank you for joining us. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.